Greetings. Black Media Communications and Production is proud to present Dr. Delbert Blair. He is an historian, poet, minister, researcher, lecturer, and teacher. He speaks comprehensively on 48 different topics. Concerning his education, Dr. Blair received the B.S. in Education from Roosevelt University. He received the Master's in Engineering from the University of Pennsylvania. He received the Doctor of Divinity from Aquarian Academy, and he received the Honorary Doctorate from Chicago Theosophical Society. Among his areas of expertise are Black history, ancient history, comparative religion, natural health, herbistry, safety engineering, biology, metaphysics, hypnosis, UFO research. Dr. Blair has numerous television, radio, and media appearances. He has appeared on channels 2, 5, 7, 9, 26, and 32 in Chicago, Illinois. On radio, he has appeared on Opinion, South Suburban Forum, Stan Dale Show, Viewpoint, stations WIND, WBBM, MGN, and many others. He has hosted radio shows over station WBEE Chicago Saturday mornings called Opinion. Dr. Blair has lecture appearances at the University of Notre Dame, Chicago, Illinois, Urbana and Chicago Circle, Loyola, DePaul, Michigan State, Indiana, Roosevelt, Idaho, Iowa State, Western Illinois, Eastern Illinois, Southern Illinois, Tennessee State, Tuskegee, Bradley, and many other colleges and universities. To spend an evening with Brother Blair is to ride a light beam through the cosmos. To schedule his consultations, lectures, and workshops, be sure to contact the Meta Center, 1448 East 52nd Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60615. And that phone is 1-312-643-5053. Without further ado, let us welcome and greet Dr. Delbert Blair.
Before my father comes up, I wanted to say a couple of words. First of all, I personally am very proud, not just of my father, whenever I see a gathering. See, if everybody doesn't know this, man, I know him. I'm 32, and I'm an old soul. I think I may have known him for 1,000 years. But I can remember a time in the 60s when my dad would speak and try to disseminate knowledge to brothers on several subjects. Not just metaphysics, not just in-depth Black history, and no one would be there, 4 or 5 brothers. And I can remember going to school, and after people hearing my father on the radio, the discussions of when I go to school myself, are you that crazy man's son? And so now it's beautiful to be able to stand in front and see all my beautiful brothers and sisters and realize that my father is no longer a crazy man to the world, though I've always known that he wasn't. It's good to see that other people finally are realizing his genius. When you see the tables in the back, sometimes it hurts me that my father has to be a peddler, but no one else carries some of the things that he carries. When you get little charges that we have to charge you, I watched my father for 30 years compile by himself. I've been trying to get him to write a book. My brother and I are musicians. We've been trying to get to a point where we can alleviate him from the stress so he can just sit down and disseminate his knowledge. I often pray at night that he writes some books and disseminates all the knowledge I've heard over 30 years before he dies. It scares me. It's too much that will go with you. What you all will hear this evening will only be a small smidgen of what I've heard over 30 years, the stories, from the UFOs to the almost near contacts, to the arguments with Mayor Daley when he was organizing brothers and sisters during Chicago, from when Farrakhan and the minister came to our house and wanted him to teach. See, my father's a very humble man. He won't speak of many of the things in which he's gone through. But I just want you to know that not only is his family proud of him, but I'm proud of you. It's about time. I love to see my brothers waking up. And each time I notice it's stronger and stronger. See, I've been here in Atlanta for 5 years, but I'm always very silent because I'm always very worried. You have to worry, watch your back on who you say what to, so that you're not perceived as an odd idiot. See, it's hard to go and discuss pyramids and discuss the strength of our people and where they've come from. I teach in the school system. And when I first got here, I was young and fresh and opened my mouth too much. And I was told to quiet down, but I didn't know where I could turn with my back, so I just silenced. So now I see. So you'll be hearing more from me and seeing more of me now that I know that my back is covered. And with no more to do, I would like to introduce to you my father, Dr. Delbert Blair.
After that, I got to take a little minute or two here to spread out some of my material. Hold on, if you will. See. Most of the time, I wind up not referencing the materials anyway, but I always want the ponies just in case there's some specific references that doesn't come to mind. I also think I left a box in the back that had the yellow booklet of prophecies. If Marcia or Arv or somebody could eventually get me one of those yellow booklets, I'd appreciate it. And on the TV cameras, you're not supposed to see this, so yeah. Huh? Yeah, I can probably use that table too, but that's okay. I can use it probably for some of the products later. So let me take some of these out there too. First of all, thank you very much for your attendance today. You didn't know whether it was going to rain or not. Hopefully it will not. But I'm understanding that you are quite used to rain here in Georgia, huh? Not quite 40 days and 40 nights, but you pushed the record. You got to 30, and the whole world knows you exist. Used to be the Georgia Peaches. Now it's the Georgia Pontoons, if you will. But don't feel either afraid of that or worried about that, because the whole world will soon be catching you as we get into the time of catastrophes and plagues. And I'm not saying that to frighten you, because I'd be probably as frightened as you are if I didn't believe that if I continue to do what I'm supposed to do, they'll make a way. And if they don't make a way, I'll go with a clear conscience, as all of us will go one time or another anyway. But our world, our planet, our continents are plagued right now with all kind of potential catastrophes that are happening or possibly will happen. There's a double name almost for this presentation. I really don't want to call it a lecture, because we're going to cover so many subjects. Iriola and Sister Nma will definitely be able to sell this one, because even though I understand what I'm doing, time is getting short and it becomes harder and harder to hold back. And when an audience does come out, is supportive, and they pay well, and I appreciate all of that, I want to do my part. So we're going to cover, even though the title of it is Earthquakes, Hurricanes, Prophecies, and Youth, and the subtitle will be The Coming Catastrophes, Can We Survive Them? Or God-made, man-made catastrophes, Will We Be Alive in 2000? So you can get all kind of different names for it. I don't know which one to call it, because as I do research, as I do travel, as I have the helpfulness of the Creator to unlock more and more things that used to be mysteries, the titles become almost inconsequential. The subject matter becomes very paramount. As you've probably seen, how many of you bought any of my tapes before? Thank you. How many of you were here about a year ago when I was here? Double thank you. See, you want to get hurt twice. No, I mean, no. In studying so many different fields, and I'm old enough to have done so, it becomes difficult to know which one I like the best. I am an ordained minister. I gave up a church, because some of you have asked me this kind of independently, so I'll say it collectively and you don't have to ask anymore. I gave up a church that was really beginning to prosper. I probably could have retired from churchdom had I kept with that. But I find I'm not a hypocrite. I cannot do or say what I cannot believe in thoroughly. And of course, when I was a younger man, I wanted to be a minister, and I was both ordained a minister as well as a graduate from a school of divinity. And I had a church that was really growing, and then I found one of the good buddies of mine said, you ought to talk to some of the people that are backing you there. They may not be backing you as much as you thought. And I got angry with him before he told me that. He said, I'm doing it because I am one of the few friends seemingly you have. And I found out that they were already going to divide up the monies that were coming in, going to get on into a tithing role, incorporating some of the things, the lockouts and lock-ins that I've seen some of the ministers do, and just various and sundry things. And so I met with them, and they made a tape. The guy made a tape for me and said, here, you listen to the voices. So I walked away from that one, and I told them, if you're already arguing about what we don't have, instead of beginning to be better at what we are presenting, then you probably know a better way to do this than I, and I left it. I have not looked back, and that's it. And doing even more studies into the Bible and more studies into some of the secret organizations that promoted the printing of the new Bibles and understanding that it's being changed on a consistent basis, that led me to a whole plethora of subject matter. And I have a tape that I didn't even want to put out. I held back this information for close to 18 years. And then I found somebody had gotten the tape out of our master file, and it was being circulated throughout the country. When I have done the lecture, it's been to close the series, when usually it comes in a course that I teach called Expanding Consciousness. And in so doing, one of the last subjects that I teach is the true story of Christianity. Well, somebody had gotten hold of this and put it out. So once I said, well, I'm out there anyway, I might as well make the money for it too. My cost for the video on that is $50, $49.95, and I don't even bat an eye about it. The cost for the audio is close to the same thing, but it breaks down the whole thing on the Council of Nicene, the coming of Apollonius, the whole bit. Why do I throw that out too? Because for a long time, and I know many lecturers who just harp on that one subject, and comparative religions, if you would. In 1960, very young man, and I had an experience that changed again the course of my life. And that was when, as far as I'm concerned, I met two extraterrestrials. Now, I've said on the tapes, and I did one at the Nation of Islam with the sanction of Minister Farrakhan at Mosque Maryam and at the Final Call in Chicago. Some of you may have even seen those tapes. They're now some, I guess, 8 years old. Time flies. When I talked about this, I talked about it because the extraterrestrials that I met were black. I have read of none of the other books, and I hope that you will help me and make me intelligent by telling me the books that talk about extraterrestrials that are black. Okay? The ones I met were, and how did I know they were? I got a tape, Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind. That came out 1 month after the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out. I called mine the Fourth Kind. And because of what they told me, because of what they showed me, and because of what they were able to do, which I have not seen any man duplicate yet, I was impressed. It takes a lot to impress me. I was impressed, very much so. And I knew I was out of my league, and that's when I wanted to find out how they could do what they did and where they were coming from. So that led me on a course of study, because at that time I had received a lot of honorary degrees. I was very much in demand in the corporate world. I always wanted to do for self, so I had my own business. And I had a big decision to make, and I had prayed and meditated and done everything, and I find, let me kind of say this too, I find when things change for me, it's probably the same time and way that they change for you. I have to get on fire with something. I got to really get into it with all my heart, soul, mind, and body. My etheric, my astral, my mental, my causal, the whole bit. I've got to deal with it. Once that happens, within 30 days' time, and now I'm finding it's even a shorter space of time, things move for me. But if I don't get on fire with it, daggone it, it seems to stagnate, it seems to go around, circumacute, so on again like this. Well, I'd gotten on fire because it was a crossroads in my life. If there were spaceships and extraterrestrials, if there were aliens and there were life on other worlds, then for me to get into a 9 to 5, seeking to satisfy some man or woman, taking half of my life source away, and then having only enough time to study on the weekends and have to live for TGIF, then, I wasn't going to go both ways. Fortunately, the Creator, being good, answered my fervent wish, and I got to see 3 UFOs close up. I got to talk with these people, and after that, I didn't need personally any other fulfillment. That was like a lifelong dream. It meant more to me than the degrees that I still get conferred on me and all the rest of it, because it let me know that I had found a truth. I don't know if you've ever heard any of my tapes or if you've taken any of my classes, but there's a saying, it's a pet saying I've used for 28 years. There is no truth until you decide what truth is. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart, and I didn't realize how droit a statement that was when it was formulated, because we are all a product of our truths. We're all a product of what we fervently believe. I also say now that I've gotten deeper into meditation and understand the parable of magnetism and drawing forth, that is the way all things are granted to the Creator's children. You have to want it so badly that you're willing to pay the price for it, and the price does not have anything to do with money. It's sacrifice, discipline, things along this line. Only then do I get it, but once you get it that way, it doesn't matter from white man, brown man, black man, yellow man, or green man has to say, you know it for your truth. It doesn't matter what mommy or daddy says, or sister or brother, or husband or wife. It doesn't matter what minister or teacher says, you know. And that's the only thing that marks your soul engram, so you can carry with you the things that are necessary. I repeat to you that because it no longer is going to matter what the media is telling you, what the teacher is telling you, or what the minister is telling you. It matters what you really understand for self. Because when this judgment day, and I know some of you may have just left church, comes about, you will judge yourself, and your soul will not lie. And the soul will reveal everything that you've ever engraved upon it. At least that's my truth. So it kind of behooves us at this time to find some truths about some things. You've heard me state before that most of the things we have been taught are 359 degrees in opposition. If you take most of the things you've learned as basic truths and turn them around almost into a full circle, you'll come closer to the truth. Now that's a heck of a statement. And I realized I just made it. And I know if I was in the audience listening to a nut come up here and say something like that, I would look at him very jaundicely and say, my brother, why did you choose to go off on night point or gun point when you didn't have to? You didn't have to say that, but you did. Well, believe me, I mean it. From the little research that I have done, almost everything we have been taught under this training program that we call education is childish, childlike. They will never educate you collectively, sometimes not even individually, if you may become dangerous, to overthrow them, to refute their libraries and change their schooling system, change their governmental process, or their social mores. You wouldn't either if you were on top. And most of you, being students of black history, understand already that collectively the good and powerful things of earth were spirited away from the black race. They were taken away so long ago that we even ask our question now, how could we possibly have gone so far and so high, according to anthropologists and historians, and fall so low? I'll give you an easy answer. It was to disseminate against the non-spiritual people of Earth and keep the planet alive and in a collective free zone for a few more eons of time. Other than that, this planet would have been destroyed a long time ago. You are the soul savers, but in soul saving, you forgot who you were. The planet is about to restore who you were by restoring its consciousness. It's been in a coma for some time. A collective soul strong enough to think it could take on being a planet on the edges of a free will zone. What do I mean by that? According to metaphysical teachings, the deeper ones, and many of you are beginning to come into the same consciousness, so I'm only stimulating what you already feel. We are part of the system of Sirius. We are on one of the distant suns of Sirius. And this planet has been an experimental enterprise for some time, where the collective mentality of many galaxies and 2 constellations came to bring here the beautiful, perfect Tierra, that's our planet, Tierra, enabling it to bring forth life on different scales. The mistake was made, however, that it brought forth life from what is called the laggards, the ones on other planets who couldn't make the grade, who were its criminals, its downfallers, its retarders, and brought them here thinking that the great white lodges of the pyramids and the underworld could teach them. And that's where we collectively made a big mistake, a mistake we're still paying for. If any of you are doing any kind of traveling, whether it be mentally in front of a dictionary, encyclopedia, TV set, or other type of media, if you're doing it in the form of airlines and planes and boats and trains, you know that our Earth over the last 30 years has become a very unstable place. If you don't know that, then you better get on some of those boats and planes and trains and things and begin to get out from the TV set and begin to understand what time it is. There are droughts in 7 different countries as we speak. There are floods, and you, as I speak, know well of that, throughout the United States, but in China, in Peru, in areas of India. There are earthquakes happening every moment of every minute as I speak to you now. In Matsushiro, Japan alone, there are 3,000 quakes per hour. Just constant tremors going on there. On the sacred islands of Osaka, amongst the Japanese Isles, even the ancient tombs there, for this is their most religious sacred islands, and it says that Osaka is joined by tunnels to the Dalai Lama, that the great Buddha, the Eightfold Path teacher, has residence in our world, entered into from the islands of Osaka. How well we don't know, how well we know, who knows? That is their legend. Osaka is even rocking and rolling. There are all kind of seiches on freshwater inland ports, big waves that roll from lake to lake. There are all kind of whirlpools and tidal waves on the oceanic, and the oceanic islands are being besieged with them. Watch very closely what's going to be happening there at Haiti, by the way, too, and in Cuba in 1997. Remember, you heard it here. There is so much happening on our planet at this time. Planes are falling that you don't even hear reported. Did you just hear what I said? You heard about the one that fell at Pittsburgh. But I'm telling you, planes are falling they're not even reporting. Some of which are being blown out of the sky by very nasty people who don't want other people to testify, like in the last one in Pittsburgh, which is just beginning to leak out possibly now. Did the same thing in Chicago with the black woman back in, 63, that was going to testify. Really, that's what happened with KLM Airlines, too, again, if you go back and really understand the truth. That's CIA-1 property. You see, so much is going on as the forces, and you've heard this depicted in the movies, for good, now are becoming strong enough to combat the forces that are bad. That has always been an opposition in the universe. But here, in this free will zone, it's becoming something that everyone will have to be aware of, if you would. Many of the prophets and prophecies that the prophets expounded are happening. We'll go back to the one book that most black people feel that they understand more than any other, the Holy Bible. And if we look through the book of Job and the book of Revelations, we find in there many things that are talked about that seemingly may have a correlation, a correlate in the times that we're living within. There is within that the prophecies of the 7 golden candlesticks and the beast mark, 666, and many other tribunals that will come together on the harlot that sits on 13 hills and dispenses again toward those that would fall victims of her harlotism, her misinformation, her low vibrations. These double talks are not really so much double talk nowadays because many things that we've previously heard about are beginning to be able to be understood. How many of you read or attempted to read or have interpreted the quatrains of Nostradamus? If you realize and have, you realize that they could mean almost anything, almost at any time, even though some of the books state specifically, this is what this refers to. They're very difficult to interpret, the original quatrains. How many of you are aware of the Sleeping Prophet books and many other things from ARE Society, the Edgar Casey Society, that talks about the things that he predicted? How many of you are aware of those? We find that they've now, when I first began to buy their books, they had one big compendium. Now they're putting it out in separate books. You make more money that way. I can appreciate that. But at the same time, it takes you longer to get the information, and you don't understand how he entwines some of that information when now the subject is being pulled out. But he, in turn, talks about many of the things that will be happening on the islands and on the so-called 7 continents. We really only have 6. Europe is not a continent. That's what is confusing a lot of people, too. There's a Mother Shipton that lived in Louisiana, died about 1962, was an excellent oracle channeler. She was a black woman and consequently didn't get the just due. In fact, she would make probably Edgar Casey seem almost like a child. But I was able to get hold of some of her prophecies. And then, as a meditator and channeler, and I am both, and having had spiritual circles for, I guess, about 25 years under our branch of the Aquarian Church called the Meta Center, I now also have begun to be able to channel somewhat. Not as good as they, and not on demand like some of these people on radio and TV can do, but enough where when the members hear me and it's recorded, it astounds me what begins to come through. With all of those things, we compiled a little booklet called The Prophecies to the Year 2000. Within that, we have a special earthquake insert. It is the 20 most earthquake-prone cities in the United States and why. Some of you already asked me that. It's right in this little pamphlet. Sells a very expensive thing, costs $3.50. Right? It's all right there. These prophecies have not been changed in 15 years. I haven't had to. They speak for themselves. Only 2 do I wonder about when is it going to happen, and that's a person calling themselves God to appear in the Gobi Desert. Everything else here, you can almost begin to see now what's happening with it. Some of the things that are mentioned in here is that there will be new lands appearing in the Gulf of California. That will begin to happen in the next 2 years. We can see how on time this is. That in the Red Sea and the Pacific and Arctic Oceans, new lands will appear. And in Jamaica and in Bimini in the Caribbean, new lands also to appear. One of the reasons why the so-called triangles of terror, it's not just the Bermuda Triangle, but 12 other triangles throughout the world, the China Sea, Red Sea, places that you don't hear about because the governments don't want you to think that you live on an unstable planet. They want you to think everything is under control. It is, but not by them. When you begin to look at these areas and really begin to see what is possibly happening on our planet, it is astounding. Did you know that in July alone, there were 5 ships that lost themselves in the Bermuda Triangle? Why don't you hear that on all the TV reports? Why isn't that major headlines? In the Gulf of China and in the Red Sea, there's always something disappearing or appearing. What do I mean by that? In the Red Sea and also along the Straits of Madagascar, they have seen sea serpents. They travel in pairs. I don't know if it's mama or papa. I didn't get that close. They travel in pairs. They are devastating shipping lanes. They've been bombarded by cruisers and destroyers. The missiles, like in the movies, don't penetrate. What do you think about that? Now, they didn't say that they were breathing fire like the Gorgon and what's the guy called from Japan? What is it? Godzilla. Notice it starts with God. Godzilla. When you get that kind of powerful, people worship. And that's why they made a national shrine out of Godzilla. Used to be here, it was King Kong. And then all the rest of the ones that follow. But now we've got a natural one out there. They don't talk about that. You will read a lot of things in the tabloids that you shake your head and say, oh, I'm so glad that's not true. But aren't those people way out to write that kind of stuff? You will get, at least in the ballpark, by reading some of the tabloids, and I don't have any stock in them. They will come closer to telling you the truth than sometimes what I consider the tabloids that you consider your local newspaper, or your network news, or your coast-to-coast thing. Those tabloids will show you pictures that are not touched up. And all you have to do is ask yourself, why didn't this make the major newspaper? They had one of a frigate with a big net and some kind of a sea serpent, half the size of the frigate, being lifted up. That was not a touched-up photo. They even told you the captain's name. Most of the time, they will not tell you on there the principal city. They'll just give you a general date. That's the way that they can get underneath the Freedom of Information Act law. There have been green people, pink people, gill people found all over our earth. In the Mato Grosso, down in South America, they have the same movie that many of you saw, The Creature from the Black Lagoon. That's the way the prescription for that movie came about. They have not black and 7, 8 feet tall, but pink and 2 and 3 feet tall gill creatures that waddle around what is called Lake Popo. I reference it out, Popo. They have in the Papua, one of the ancient Bibles of the lands of the Quiche people down in South America, that states that these amphibious type people would be coming back to Earth, and their little spawn that grew up in Lake Popo, which is called the Black Lake, the Black Lagoon, that they would begin to generate before the amphibians came back, because they believed that some of the gods, referred to as Nomo, and I'm quite sure, again, with the brothers you have teaching here, you're familiar with all of those phraseologies, would soon return. That is the belief that two realms of people, two vibrational rays of people, came to Earth and intelligently incorporated themselves into what is called the human race and amongst the so-called amphibious mammalians. That Nomo represented a ray of consciousness that the porpoises and its like generated into, very intelligent, very psychic, and that human began to be the other ray of consciousness. In the Book of the Prophecies is a talk about the discovery of 2 new moons circulating our Earth. One 500 miles away, the other 750 miles away. Well, they've discovered one, but they're not telling you about it. They've even named it Cher. Almost like sunshine and Cher. Oh, no, that was wrong, wasn't it? Well, sunny day and Cher. The other one is called Shanshe. Shanshe. S-H-A-N-S-H-E-A, which means earth child, child of earth. They're both artificial, and it's where a lot of people, one of them, people will be taken to. And the other one is a big laboratory ship that begins to analyze the energies from minds and the planetary mind as it's being dispensed through Earth's electromagnetic field. I remember you heard this man come up here and say that to you. I even gave you the approximate orbiting path. And they're both not elliptical, they're pretty much circular orbits. One of the things in here again is that life will be found to exist in space, on planets, and within them. How many of you would consider yourself Egyptologists? How many would consider themselves good students of what happened in ancient Egypt? Mesopotamian people. Okay, how many people at least study at least the 18th dynasty and find great pride in it? Now we're getting a few more. I'm like you. Well, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Dogons, the Zulus all tried to tell us about inner earth and what goes on there. The people that we most revere told us that there is no such thing as inner earth except for molten lava and quintessential type lava beds and antiquated mines that have now been dug out of their gold and silver, and we have to go at least 30 miles deep to find any. When these people said that there was a life form that generated out from in that side of that earth and came out of the caves and began to flourish upon the planet's surface, and when they said that there was a person called Sethantis who lived within, who was lord of the black people and the underworld, and that there was a city called Amenta, and later on when Dr. George Bernard talks about the hollow earth in Agartha and Shambhala and Poseid and Shoshone, some people read, some people didn't read, very few people had an understanding of what they were talking about, but they said, that's silly. Nothing lives inside our earth but things that could live inside our earth. But they never classified what those things were. When Tolkien, how many of you actually had to go to high school and study a little bit about Alexander Tolkien's Middle Earth? Or later on found out about it? How many even know what I mean when I say Middle Earth? Some of you had to study that. I had to study that foolishness too. But I didn't understand when they were teaching that they were putting into mythology possibly a reality that was in the library at On. But then they told you that the library at On really wasn't until Alexander built it. And then they taught you it was called what? The Alexandrian Library and Museum. What they didn't bother to teach you, as again part of the misteaching, was that your ancient people created a library at On, the city of On, which was directly connected to the Indo-Europeans, and that the libraries told about their start, the coming of the laggards, the big abomination of earth, and how much time it would have to get all of that straight. That's what they hid from you. That's just part of the missing books of the compilation of what we now call the Old Testament, the book of Abijah, the book of the wars of the Lord, and so on again like this. Some of you are now into what they call the study of the Alexander Piscean Chronicles, referred to as the Earth Chronicles. A researcher, archaeologist, and nowadays, if you are a historian now, they grant you a fellowship, you also then become the title archaeologist. He has done a lot of research on the Sumerian text and the Babylonian text and the codexes, and he states that on these stone tablets and on parchment is another complete record on the Sumerian chronicles of what happened on our earth. How many of you have any of the Piscean novels? Whoa, 1, 2, 3 people. Okay, I thought 4, thought more than that. Well, for those of you who are interested in that, we also have the 6th editions hardback for $99. Can't beat that with 2 hammers. Again, collectively, because we do the research, we have buying power, this is there if you're interested in that. Another one of the prophecies in this little book of the prophecies, it says that eruptions in the Sierra Madres, Rocky Mountains, and Allegheny Range will shock people all over the world. Well, the Sierra Madres are again beginning to have many kind of vibrational, well, what would you call it? Tremors, temblars, not quite quakes yet. Nature always warns before she strikes. Mankind forgot how to warn. Human never knew. All of these forces are at work now to make our mountain ranges very dangerous places. Why do I say that? The acts of nature happen because there is energy now coming up from inside of our earth. Because there's a balance necessary now for our earth. Because of the sun in our solar system, which is putting forth tremendous amounts of energy, which is interacting with the sun inside of our earth, which must now balance that energy and put forth what it's receiving like any good proton will. Because of this, gases are building up and a lot of quaking and energy shifting is going on. Why didn't the government tell you about the inner Earth sun? Why doesn't the government tell you that there are pressures being built up there that seems to be coming from within the planet itself? All they're talking about is magna, and that the planets float on water and they're shifting, and other such foolishness, and tell you to throw away your fluorohydrocarbons because you're beginning to devastate the Earth's atmosphere. Well, they have been devastating the Earth's atmosphere every time a jet takes off. That takes up 50 cases of fluorohydrocarbons. But they don't stop the jet planes, even though they've been showing levitating devices that don't have to use jet propulsion. When these activities in these high places, diverse upon the earth and mountainous upon the earth, happen enough, people will begin to look and wonder what in the world is happening. Or another phrase we like to use, what on earth is the matter? We know what to say, we just don't know what we're saying. When Mount St. Helens erupted and everybody got real shook up, and that plume of dust and debris went across the United States and began to darken the sky, everybody said, oh my God. Well, some people don't believe, so they said, oh. And that was a metaphysical utterance, but they didn't know it. But as usual, this wonderful free press that we have hid the explosion of Chica underneath the trembling of Mount St. Helens. Brother Blair, Dr. Blair, what do you mean the trembling of Mount St. Helens? That daggone thing erupted and caused a problem. It surely did. But Chica caused much more of a problem, but they didn't tell you. They incorporated it, and that's why they had you looking at Mount St. Helens. Chica is down in Mexico. And that daggone thing was equal to 5 times the size of Mount St. Helens, and it blew its natural dome. It went off and spread debris over 3/4 of our planet, creating what they call a greenhouse effect. But they can't understand how the greenhouse effect took place, so they tell you. And Chica did more damage than SA5, Mount St. Helens. But they buried that one and resurrected the one that everybody could report about here in the United States, because off the coast of Oregon and in California and in Washington, the state, they were aware of this, so they couldn't hide that one. They talk about the San Andreas fault line. They talk about what may happen if the San Andreas fault line ruptures. Well, if it does, and you have people living on the West Coast, there's going to be a lot of cards being sent, and a lot of planes flying in and out, and a lot of heartache. But the people on the West Coast also know about some other fault lines. There's a fault line that runs not only along Tacoma and Seattle and Puget Sound and British Columbia, but also one that runs again near Anchorage and again parts of Alaska and Vancouver and Washington. There's a fault line that runs not too far from here and also through St. Louis, the Madeiras Fault. There are fault lines all over the place, if you would. The Logan fault line. Well, anyway, I won't start naming all the fault lines. They're right in the book. The point is, why do they keep you looking at just the West Coast? Because the West Coast people have been warned for the last 85 years that that ain't the place to be. And then they say it might hit at any time without warning. You give a person 85 years worth of warning, how much warning do you think they have to get? Yes, in 85 years, you can do a lot of living and a lot of dying, but the warnings are still there. It is a very trepidous place to live. They're only telling you about one fault line that's there. They're now beginning to admit that there are three that cross each other, all the way up near Oregon and British Columbia, all the way down to the Gulf of California. Now I will share with you a very deep secret that ain't so secret anymore. And if it was, it won't be now, will it? From the Rocky Mountains westward, that land there was not part of ancient Algonquin, which is the land on which we now live. We call it the Americas. Misnamed after Amerigo Vespuccio, the Italian map maker, and all because of what the Columbus foolishness was about. And I say Columbus foolishness is another lecture I give. Christopher Who discovered what? That land west of the Rocky Mountains was part of the ancient land of Lemuria, known as Mu. People want to know what happened to the Muites and what happened to Lemuria? Look to the coast. Those that survived. And those that didn't survive went inside the earth, as all survivors that are high in vibration are invited to at the end of a millennia, decamillennia, or cataclysmic undertaking. You heard that well? Don't say you didn't hear it. Say, did he say that? And do I want to find that to be a truth? But the first part, yes. The second part, I don't know. Lemuria, or Mu, was a land in the Pacific that encompassed most of that area that now is made up with the Pacific Isles. From the Hawaiian archipelagos to New Zealand, all of that land there was part of a great continent when the earth had more land than water. The ancients told you about that. Some people believe, like Velikovsky's theory, that boom, part of that earth came up and rendered our moon, which set itself in orbit, and that's what happened to it. That's really childlike. When it's necessary on the Q&A, I'll tell you what it's childlike theorizing. But what did happen there was that a great landmass broke up. And what you see now are the remnants of that breaking up, including the fabulous Easter Island, which no one can explain, with all of those big heads there that look real funny. To me, they look like President Nixon. That's not funny. I didn't hear you. Oh. I try to inject humor sometimes. It's a sick kind sometimes, but then I live on a sick planet, so what do you expect? When that breakup happened, part of that landmass slammed against the western coast of Algonquin, creating the Rocky Mountains. And that's why once you cross the Rockies and you go west, young man, woman, child, urchin, and whoever else, things are different. Things grow bigger there, they are better there, and it's true, the vibrations are different there. And before the sick humans began to pollute that area, it was one of the highest vibratory places on our continent, bar none, and things are much different. But the karma, the belief that you pay by what you do for what you do soon after you do it, that involved there is still to be paid off, and it's being paid off now. So as new lands come up, old lands must go down. How many of you are familiar with the I Am America map, the Toyi? How many are familiar with the Scallion map? Well, okay, you're not gophers anyway, that's good, you're independent thinkers. Those two maps supposedly show the coming Earth changes and how the United States will look. And it has a big scalloped area on the I Am America map by the Toyis, and a huge C of the Scallion map. That all of that area up to the Rockies will be gone. Well, I agree with them. but not quite the way that either of them show. I think it will be a series of inlets and peninsulas. But there will be devastation up to the Rockies because the vibrations there are now not needed here. And what was done will now be undone, and it will go back into the sea from which it was as new islands come up in the Pacific Ocean. These are all prophecies, by the way, folks. It states there that all of the shores, both biblically, Edgar Cayce, Nostradamus, and my own, that the shores on the coastal lines of the United States, and I feel you're more interested in that probably in Africa than in the other continents, that the coastal line areas there will be devastated. I presently just finished some classes in Brooklyn. I'm supposed to start some in New Jersey. And I'm teaching the same things there, and then I'm also using geological survey maps there to show that the research kind of corresponds with what I'm teaching here in the Book of the Prophecies. That there will be devastations and earthquakes in Buffalo, New York, that there will be tremors in New Jersey, that all the way down in the Virginias, that around to Florida, all the way to Texas, and along the coast of New Orleans and so on and so forth again, that there will be all kinds of earthquakes, hurricanes, tidal waves, and a lot of trauma and grief, because this is a coastal area, and the seas are swelling. Another one of the prophecies again, that there will be warming trends, both in the Arctic and Antarctic. Well, it's already warming in the Arctic and Antarctic. In fact, what they're not telling you again, as they have you looking up and out instead of down and in. How you like that? Up and out instead of down and in. Is that the Antarctic, the icebergs and the ice cap there are breaking off. They're falling into the oceans, and the oceans are swelling and becoming colder as the Antarctic and Arctic are becoming warmer. One of the prophecies again. That water, which is fresh, for all ice and icebergs have fresh water. Did you know that? While the oceans have what? Salt water. Ever ask yourself, why? How can you have freshwater icebergs in saltwater oceans? But as these two different polarities now clash, salt and brine, and the positive element of sodium, with the natural lakes and oceans, they will create again an imbalance in our waters of Earth, in addition to the swelling of the oceans of Earth and the seas of Earth. The St. Lawrence Seaway being one of the tributaries dug by man, and the Panama Isthmus another. We call it the canal there, across the isthmus. As so above, so below. As once was, will be. We all go in cycles. Cyclic energies that we never learn. What goes around comes around. We say the phrases, but being in the days that we are in, we don't understand what we say. Why do you think people invent little tomes and metaphors and anecdotes other than to remember things that are so true that the best way to remember them is to use parables and things because they're so constant? Another euphemism, nothing is so constant as change. See, you've heard all of these kind of things. We can also talk about that change, which we will in the last part of tonight's lecture. That's what your money's going to be worth soon. You might as well spend it with me today. And let me worry about keeping it for you later. Well, at least I'm being like some ministers. Well, see what your ear can do? I try to make something that is very dire and non-funny, a little bit humorous, as I tell you about the coming earth changes, as I know what I'm saying will hurt some of you who may have investments or families on those coasts, or may even be planning on retiring there or spending half your summers there. I'm invited to come to L.A. the next 2 months and spend a lot of time there. I told them with the contract, maybe. It depends on what you all are doing. Okay? And believe me, the kind of hell that the government wants to raise out on the coast will cause spiritual reactions amongst people through fear and grief and anxiety that will bring on even faster the potential catastrophes. So as I watch what humans and mankind do to each other, I kind of watch and wait and listen and tune in. I came in today, a couple of brothers were in the back, and I won't name them unless they choose to be named a part of it, and I said, what was that? And I felt a vibration underneath the floor when I came in. And they said, well, Blair, it's because you drink too much. Or do that other sniffing act. But I don't really. But it happened before. It happened the same time when I was in St. Louis. And I think it was about 3.5 months later they began to say that there was a lot of potential earthquake potential there. And on December 7th, I think it was of 1991, they said it was going to be a huge quake there. I remember I had some 500 people that I was speaking to then. I said, let's just form this circle because we're near this fault line. Let's see if we can stave it off. And I told them point blank, it would not happen on December 7th or 9th. It wouldn't happen, period, if they would change their vibrational rate here. And the president ran through there. Well, the president has run through here a lot recently, too. Which president? Doesn't matter. They're all the same nowadays. Or. Maybe I should ask president of what planet? That may make more sense. Oh, you missed that one too, didn't you? Some of you nodded knowingly. As we see these things happening, obviously you must ask yourself, what on earth is the matter? Where can I go to? What can I do? Is this really going to happen in my generation? In my sons and daughters' generation? Is there really just no end to this mess, and what is wrong with God that he would bring this upon us? Well, I don't know what's wrong with God that she might bring it on us. But I say again, don't bring everything on God, for you are that. But you just don't know it. So therefore the Creator must hopefully awaken you the best that she can, or she can, in time for you to do something about saving your own planet and not leaving it to the destruction of those that you feel are not spiritual, but you still believe in holy, because I see you backing them all the way. First of all, with your own veins and blood, which you let them stick needles into, and the school system which you fight to have your children put into. So you must back them all the way, because you let them invade your privacy of mind and body, and that's as spiritual as I can get. You don't? This month you just did. I won't even ask how many you had your kids vaccinated because you feared that you might go to jail or they might get angry with you. Don't answer that because you might get embarrassed, and I'd be embarrassed for you. So we'll leave that a numb situation. But after reading way back when about the Atlanta child murders, where's Atlanta, by the way? Am I anywhere near Atlanta? Was there some child murders that happened in Atlanta that you know about? Was it true that I heard something about at this place called Atlanta, which is interesting too, its own name, Atlanta, that some of these kids, when they found them, their bodies looked kind of aged, that these were children in the top 1/4% of their classes, that some kind of nurse from the Center for Disease Control, affiliated with 2 major universities, came around first to interview parents about these kids. But the little girl tied to the tree not only was terribly killed, but looked older also. And that's something about, well, we have young ones here. One of the sexual organ tips was missing. Now, I don't live in Atlanta, so I know this must be rumor. If you know anybody that lives in Atlanta, could you ask them to tell me if any of that thing I said might be true? Would you ask them if you ever see them, maybe nearby or anything, or ask yourself? If there were any truth to any of the things that I heard, would you raise your hand? Wow, you've been reading about Atlanteans too, huh? Now I wonder, off of that, and your infamous Center for Disease Control, and all the money that the president is bombarding here, and every administration will, because they don't run it anyway, they follow orders, why you would let your kids get some more shots in their arm? Unless you are a true believer. Not just on Sunday. Or, okay, Saturday if you're of a different faith. Take your stand while you can, because you're going to have to stand anyway. At least let them stand for something. It reminds me of, I'm going to ramble a little bit here, because that reminds me of something else. A very great person, Dr. Coggins, lived in Kenya, began to do some research about a very devastating subject called AIDS. And I'm not going to go real deep with this because I got that also on the tape. That's an entirely different lecture. But I told you we're going to cross on a lot of things because it's going to lead up to the finale of this lecture. And this Dr. Coolidge said that he had been researching this viral, virulent, ubiquitous disease called AIDS, and it led him to live into what they call veterinary medicine, and a kind of a bacteriological that was or would attack animals. And I know you've heard the famous bovine Visna virus and the anthrax virus combined together to form what would be called now the new AIDS virus. That this was sheep rot and anthrax put together with the cancer type of a virus invasive found from a particular black woman, Helen Lack, HL. HLV was Helen Lack virus. And then they changed it because you might have been able to research that, and you might have found out she was black and had melanin, and therefore they were making it melanin affinity. But then that would have made some sense. You might have awakened, so they had to change that. But when Coolidge tracked that down and found out that that's what they were dealing with, and that it didn't come from any green rhesus monkey, or even a brown rhesus monkey if they had a strain, but came from some of the Bethesda, Maryland research areas and so on and so forth, and was asked for, granted, and paid for, and now distributed. When he found that out, and this is why I bring this up, and he asked an American virologist and veterinarian to share some of his research because he had read that there was a particular guy down in New Mexico that had reached the same conclusion, and invited him over to Kenya. And they had the meeting of the organization of what? African, what's it called? The OA what? Well, all right, they had a meeting there. And all of these 21 African countries came there to understand what Professor Coolidge had discovered about this. And then they found out that they had actually pinned down what virus was because they had a serum that was good for it. And the people would stay there no more than 2 weeks, spend no more than that time than $800 plus whatever it cost them to get there, and they were having a cure ratio of 90%. Well, of course, that was too much. And so things had to be done. So I understand now Coolidge is dead. Immunex has replaced Kinron, and Immunex is being sent here. Let me just simply say this about that. On the board of directors of the Mitsubishi Company, who controls the manufacture of it, I told you the real name of the company behind it, are three men who stated that the reason why the United States would become a third world country if it didn't watch out was because of the backward black population. And the minister there, the emperor, stated again that black people were the scourge of the United States. They're the ones manufacturing your Immunex. Did you know that? Which they now find that the AIDS was seemingly built for because of the immune system and because of melanin. Now, I don't know that anything is wrong with Immunex, but I do know that the 3 board members who put up the capital for something that I'm distributing had already said that the inferior races of Earth are black, and that the ones in the United States are holding back, and there's no difference now between Tokyo and the United States. If you understand anything about trilateralism, I think I'd be very wanting to try any of their products, or I think I'd try somebody else that liked me better first. But then again, I am a very interesting individual. I suffer from paranoia. I also am very neurotic. You don't even have to ask me. I don't have complexes with that. I admit to that. I have deep neuroses. They grow hourly. But if you study a half of what I study, open your consciousness and your spirituality 3/4 of what I try to do, and you can view the psychotic actions of the militant faction of this planet who run it and are not neurotic, you're already psychotic. Did you follow me? Or will you? How many just fail to understand what I just said, or think I'm just too abusive to you? Or you can raise your hand twice, and that way I won't know which one you're agreeing to. If everybody understood, then you understand why I say I'm neurotic, because the psychotic individuals already run your planet. So I'd be foolish if I wasn't a little bit worried about that. You know, we're not psychotic again. That's why we had the Gulf War, the Panama invasion, the Grenada foolishness. That's why we have Kumsa saying he's tired of growing dope and selling it to United States politicians and businessmen, because he got religion now, and the august internal decision body making of the United States armed forces and military and political forces said, if you dare stop making dope and send it to the United States, we'll take your family out. I got that on tape. Colonel Bogreis's interview with Kumsa, the drug leader of the Orient, 2,000-man personal army. Follows him everywhere he goes, in the air, on land, so on and so forth. I hate to live like that, but he's under fear of his life. He stated he was tired of growing dope and selling it to the United States. Because all those little gang members in the local community weren't paying enough. Did you just hear what I just said? Did you understand? Do you want me to have to really break it down? I don't like to do that. Want me to break it down? Yeah. Break it down. How many really didn't understand the sophisticated way in which I presented it in the first place? But you always want me to go nitty gritty and just break it on down. Where's that? Yeah, right. Well, see, that's what's wrong now. We break it down, but we don't build it up. I'd rather have you come up than to go down, where some maybe, since I was there, I want to get up from it. The United States, and I'll use my words carefully because this tape will be spread, through particular branches of its government and its governmental representatives. Still with me? Imports dope into the United States borders and flies it in, I guess on a weekly basis. It comes in pretty regular. Little one-man, two-man, big submarines come up and surface, and then they fly it right into their land. They got airfields all over the place. They just take it right on in. Pay for it well, too. Pay the flyers well, too. Kumsa said that. I didn't say it. And why did I believe Kumsa? Because Kumsa didn't have to say what he said when interviewed with Colonel Bogreis. And then once it's brought in, it's distributed to wherever they want it distributed to. Isn't it interesting that a gang-banging punk on the streets can get hold of advanced weaponry? You go and try to buy it as responsible citizens with a voter's registration card and a driver's license, and then get the bullets for it. Uzis, M12, 30. What's this other daggone thing? That, come on. I mean, I just go down the corner store and I get that all the time. You know that for sure, right? And then I go get my kilos because it's a neighborhood drugstore. If I have a pharmaceutical prescription, he'll sell it to me, right? No, dope will never be done away with because the United States' real GNP is dope. But don't feel bad, half the world's GNP is dope. Spread it one form or another. Some of this is written between pages of books. That particular movie, which by the way I have, explains all of that. Now, if a planet, like some of its young people, and a planet got tired of people growing what it considered a very wonderful plant, the poppy, and then misusing it by putting it directly through chemicals or vapor into the brain, which the planet spent a lot of time helping to create a life form for, and the creator spent a lot of time trying to help you keep inside of a big cranial mantle this thing we call our brain, and then we fry it, bake it, boil it, and misuse it. Anything but use it. And pay people to help us do that with. There comes a time when a planet may get tired. We hear that the invasion of Haiti is imminent if Aristide is not restored, and if the brutal warlord generals there don't get out yesterday. Raoul, we're coming for you. Tell Raoul, I'm paraphrasing now, I got no truck with Raoul Sadiq. Well, they came for Saddam Hussein. They came for brother there in Libya. They come for anybody that stands up and tries to lead a people. I don't want to denigrate too much against Aristide, but not only was he defrocked for homosexuality, but he also has done some very interesting things himself. Read about the man Aristide. And wonder why there's so much emphasis now on Haiti and coming emphasis on Cuba, who, by the way, they have put an embargo on both for so long, and that's why things are working like they are now. The United States won't let anything get delivered of value in there. And now that they have aligned with those dirty communist countries, you bought that too, didn't you, when they were selling it? Huh? Now it's okay to be a communist. 3 years ago, 10 years ago, and the McCarthy hearings was at the 58, no way. Well, the international bankers and so laugh at you because they live where they want, trade what they want, have bank accounts where they want, and they let you be politically infringed upon and fight each other over what they already share. Huh? Haiti, if you understand the history of it, had an invasion at the turn of the century in which 16,000 Haitians were killed by American representatives. Go back and read about it. They want to do it again. The Marine hymn says, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. They never forgave the defeat of the American Navy at Tripoli by the Saracens. You seem to think that all of the pirates were Arnold Schwarzenegger's, swinging from the vineyards. From the vineyards, or from the vineyards. They weren't. They were sometimes the ancient navigators of the land who beat those people in their slow men of wars. They never forget that. Humans have a trait. They never forget. Spiritual people forget and forgive much too soon, maybe. We'll see. Underneath Haiti is one of the entrances to the underworld, where the little people dwell and where all kind of vibrations are now emanating from. And they want to learn how to survive on this planet, and if they can begin to incorporate enough melanin and where melanin lives and where these pockets of energy are and research it, they may be able to keep their mortal souls inside of their immortal bodies. Or is it just reverse? Thus Somaliland, plus any area that now borders on the waters of vibrational continents which are high in vibration and are not admixtured with other continents like the United States and Lemuria are grafted. As they research to stay alive on this planet, they will use any means necessary to keep their prodigies and propagations alive so that some of their DNA may get into the new millennium. The people who can best balance all of this are the people with active pineals, melanin, melatonin, and producing sorolin, which let them calm out and keep a good, easy spirit, which will be blessed during the times of great cataclysmic upheaval and the times of devastation which are near. Our Earth is an old, wonderful planet. As I understand, not only from Bringers of the Dawn, but from the Serious Mystery, from ancient Lemuria chronicles,